Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. This is the Darklight Emissary, and it's been a little while. Sorry for the delay, but I hope you've had a great year and are looking forward to another one in 2025. Today's video is going to cover a topic I've seen often over the past decade and numerous times, and most recently on a social post. And it bothers me to the point I decided to make this video on it, which is, in a nutshell, how would the Halo universe fare in the Warhammer 40k universe? Now, before diving into the details on this one, I want to point something out going into it. I grew up on Halo and its lore. I love the Halo universe. I am sad at the state it currently is in, because I'd love to be more into it, and even do a channel on Halo one day, if it ever revives to a strong enough degree to care about it again. I started getting into Halo and its universe before I truly discovered Warhammer at all to begin with. So understand that I come at this topic with a love for both of these universes' lore, and while I would say I know more about Warhammer at this point than I remember about Halo, I did read enough Halo books, lore, and remember enough I think I can qualify to make valid comparisons between the two universes. Lately, I feel like I've seen posts on social media made by people who are seemingly ignorant of Warhammer, but love Halo, and assume Halo compares to 40k, which on some levels I would say yes, that it does, but on other levels, absolutely not. But this is largely faction-based for Halo, and beyond that, we will compare some more specific examples as well that I have used in several discussions recently. With the release of the Space Marine short on Amazon, Space Marine 2, and others bringing new people into the universe, this all makes sense, and if you are new and find yourself watching this video, welcome. I don't think your questions are dumb, and I welcome the opportunity to discuss this and elaborate on what I think, and hopefully you will learn more about this universe you just found. But also perhaps this will be a good refresher for veterans of both universes who don't keep up on the lore as deeply as I do. Either way, whatever the reason, I think this will be enjoyable for us to explore today. And at first, at least, I am going to try and argue on behalf of the UNSC, Covenant, and Halo factions in the best case scenario against specifically the Imperium of Man forces in Warhammer 40k, because trying to do everything all at once here would be an absolute monster of a video, and also I just trying to compare every facet would be insanity on its own, I would say. Not even the Chaos Gods would be on board for that kind of insanity in a video, so we're going to do our best to try to simplify this and keep it somewhat succinct. So with that said, let's dive in deeper and start talking first about the two main Halo factions that we start off with. So first, we will talk about the UNSC and humanity at its height, right at the beginning of the Human Covenant War. It is estimated the UNSC had a population of around 50 billion across its estimated 800 colonies. The most powerful weaponry the UNSC has are nuclear weapons and railgun-based tech in the form of the MAC cannons, both orbital and eventually handheld varieties, along with some laser tech like Spartan lasers. The UNSC had, maybe at most, 1,000 naval vessels of various roles and sizes at the height of its power. While I couldn't find official casualty numbers after the Human Covenant War ended, from discussions and articles online from various sources, it is assumed around half of the total human population was wiped out in the war with the Covenant, leaving around 25 billion humans left, and their fleet of, let's say, the assumed 1,000 likely brought down to less than half that number. One of the major reasons for the UNSC to have taken such drastic losses, especially in naval conflict, is because of their overall inferior tech to the Covenant, mainly that the Covenant had powerful shielding to protect their ships, leading the UNSC to have to overwhelm a single ship often with 10 to 1 or more odds to have any chance of defeating just a single Covenant capital ship. UNSC vessels did not have shields at all, and the Covenant plasma weaponry that they favored was often described as simply melting through the steel plating of UNSC ships like it was no more than tissue paper being set on fire. Many UNSC vessels were destroyed by a single, successful guided plasma strike, and then I distinctly remember the Covenant bringing to bear at least one time a direct energy projector type weapon that speared directly through a large UNSC capital ship from bow to stern during the final battle above Reach in the space conflict there that occurred during that campaign. In short, if the UNSC could get the Covenant into ground battles, they stood more of a chance, and even those fights often led to ultimate defeats more times than not. The UNSC would give the Covenant a bloody nose, while the Covenant was busy returning the favor by smashing their whole damn face in, over and over again, time and time again, endlessly for the next 27 years that the war took to resolve. Humanity was ultimately looking at extinction if the Covenant hadn't have imploded politically and fought its own internal civil war in the last years of the conflict. Talking more about the Covenant itself, it's estimated the total population at the start of the conflict was around 71 billion, with the remaining population after the conflict being somewhere around 32 billion. And this is including their own internal schism that basically marks the end of the conflict, with humanity as a united front at the end of Halo 2. Covenant forces are varied based upon the alien species we were talking about, but ultimately, they make great use of plasma-based technology for weaponry, with some other forms of exotic energy weapons, like the classic needler gun. Their ships and crew complements range sometimes in the tens of thousands, having powerful shielding, and can guide plasma-based weaponry to its targets with great accuracy, as previously mentioned. This is just touching the surface here, which is the main point, because I'm going to bring up next is the Imperium of Man from Warhammer 40k. What is their population alone? It is estimated in the trillions for Warhammer, just for the Imperium. A single hive world in the Imperium, let's say the world of Armageddon, is estimated to have a population anywhere from 100 billion all the way up to 500 billion at the highest estimates. Holy Terra itself is estimated to have a population in the quadrillions, and it should be noted that at its height, the UNSC on Earth, that population was at most around 10 billion at its height. So without even getting into details on weaponry or tactics, I hope this impresses upon you the absolute sheer manpower the Imperium of Man can bring, and how it makes comparisons with Halo feel unrealistic and weird to even consider when the Imperium is just plainly larger in every conceivable way. Even if the Imperium threw human waves with no thought to tactics at the forces of the UNSC, they would essentially never run out of people before the UNSC does. Now add everything else the Imperium has. Their navy with ships that are thousands of years old, that shoot macro cannons with ammo nearly the size of the Pillar Bottom itself. It's just not feasible on a large macro scale conflict that the UNSC, even with combined support from the Covenant, is going to defeat the Imperium. Check out this image scale chart and look for the circled section showing the size of the biggest UNSC ships, the Pillar Bottom, some Covenant ships, and a few others. Do I even need to circle the 40k ships in this image? Size may not be everything for a ship, but it takes only one single shot of ammunition, the size of your own ship connecting with you, to ruin your day. The factions in Halo might end up something like the Tau, who holds on mostly due to the Imperium having to deal with mainly the Chaos and Tyranid threats elsewhere that can't really have any negotiations or diplomacy as factions. But anyone that says they can outright defeat the Imperium overall has not read much 40k lore, and it shows. If we want to dial it down into a more micro scale and look at Master Chief or the Spartan 2s as elite troops in the UNSC, what could they do against the Imperium? Probably largely what they did against the Covenant. Unlike the games where you are facing Covenant troops in direct open conflict and defeating droves of Covenant, in the actual books and background lore, the Spartan 2 teams worked mostly by slipping through Covenant lines and causing havoc using guerrilla war style tactics. If a conflict goes full alert, normally Spartan 2s can make a hasty retreat, but they likely will get injured or lose a member or two of their team in service to their goals. But as with most special forces in general, the Spartans act as a force multiplier. A Spartan's hope is to take down many thousands of Covenant or strategic objective with their sacrifice, which they were able to do at a decent rate throughout the war with the Covenant. And I envision Spartan 2s specifically doing similar things against Imperial targets, trying to infiltrate bases, set off a nuke, retreat, that sort of tactic. If they face off against Space Marines, I do not expect them to fight them in a straight-up gun battle. A Spartan's best bet would be to ambush a Space Marine squad with high-caliber weaponry. As far as height, strength, and redundancies go, a Space Marine outclasses a Spartan 2 specifically in every way. While a Spartan 2 is also modified medically in some similar ways to a Space Marine, they are still much closer to a baseline human than a Marine ever will be. A great example I will give of this is from the novel The Flood, which novelizes the events of the first game, Halo Combat Evolved. Several points are made in that book to show Master Chief getting tired, or taking a break after a particularly tough conflict. Things like falling asleep 30 seconds onto a pelican after gathering the Pillar of Autumn survivors, or taking off his helmet to sit and eat an energy bar, and recoup after a particularly grueling battle in the depths of the Silent Cartographer installation. A Space Marine in 40k does not need to take breaks like this, nor fall asleep, for a very, very long operational period of time. This disparity alone, I hope, represents the difference, let alone that Space Marines have redundant organs, whereas Spartans do not. Space Marines range in size from 9 feet to the extreme, and they estimated up to 12 feet if the rumors are true about the size of some chapter masters like Tiberos of the Carcharodons. But let's be conservative and say he is 10 feet tall max. Atriox, leader of the banished Covenant Splinter forces we faced off against in Halo Infinite, soundly defeated Master Chief and destroyed or at least severely damaged the UNSC's most advanced ship. He was able to seemingly easily lift Master Chief by his neck. And Atriox is only about 1.4 feet taller than the Chief is, if the scaling I found is accurate. Space Marines who have not undergone the Primaris Rubicon change into a Primaris Marine are also around 7.2 feet in height like Master Chief, and that's the general estimations I've found. But with Primaris change, they gain a full foot in height, along with all the other enhancements Primaris enjoy. So most Marines now range in the height range of Atriox to bigger, if we refer back to the likes of someone like Tiberos. Speaking of brutes, if we go back to some of the original book lore for Halo, in the novel First Strike, which explains how Chief got back from the first game to Earth by the time Halo 2 begins, is the first incident of Master Chief running into brutes for the very first time. And he wasn't alone. He had a small kill team of Spartan 2s saved from the smoldering ruins of Reach with him. If I remember right, it was at least 5 Spartan 2s. It has been a very long time since I read the book, but either way, the example stands that this was the first run-in for the Spartans against a squad of brutes on a Covenant space station known as the Unyielding Hierophant. Within seconds of the opening salvo of brute shots from the brutes, one Spartan, Grace, was killed near instantaneously. Master Chief ended up for the first, but not last time, lifted up and being strangled by a brute, and in general this was seen as a desperate situation against what was being shown as a new and devastating foe. My point in bringing this up is that a brute shot is somewhat similar to a bolter that basically all Space Marines carry, except even less accurate overall, especially if how they handle in the lore is anything like how they handle in the game. And bolters fire pretty accurately directly at their targets. If Spartans struggle with brutes, which by size and speed seem to be closest Halo has to actual Space Marines, I don't see how Spartans would do better in a straight-up fight against what is essentially brutes covered head to toe in armor that shrugs off small caliber rounds that Spartans are likely to carry unless they know ahead of time what they are facing. If I were a Spartan 2, I would set up an ambush with snipers, Spartan lasers, railguns, any of the highest penetrating weapons I can get my hands on, but I would never face a Space Marine in open combat. Not to mention sheer numbers again. A single chapter of Space Marines is 1,000 Marines. The Spartan 2 program produced 33 total Spartan 2s, and 16 of those survived to the end of the war, and then further casualties amongst this number followed suit. I don't think I realized until researching this again just how small in number Spartan 2s were, or even eventually Spartan 4s, which are even more successful at being elevated to Spartan status, are estimated at around 500 something individuals. The sort of losses the Spartan 2s took, which were irreplaceable, are Tuesday for Space Marines. Likewise, while it would deeply impact a chapter to lose 250 Marines, it would still recover, whereas you're talking about half of the best forces the UNSC can bring to bear being wiped out if they ran into a bad enough situation. Ultimately, Halo cannot compete with the sheer numbers that 40k can put up. It comes down to that, more than technology or anything else. And I have not brought up any other factions with the Imperium that have their own myriad ways to kill you, which there are many in range, with Spartan 2s, and well beyond them, just like Space Marines. And this isn't talking about 40k's own xenospecies, the Forces of Chaos, or any other number of myriad nightmares we could talk about here. But as said previously, to not make this video overly long, I will mention that I do think if you compare the Forerunner species, the Flood, or the precursors to Warhammer, there may be more to discuss there, but I bring up the UNSC's forces specifically because I see time and time again where people try to compare the forces as if there is anything to truly compare. I see Spartans, especially the 2s, being able to pull off some super clever, devastating attacks against Imperial forces. I will even be generous and say that Spartan 2s could possibly incur damage and the millions of casualties amongst normal human Imperial Guard type troops if given the right resources, or if they are able to commandeer enough nuclear or other high-end damaging weaponry and lure the Guard into a trap. But pound for pound, soldier for soldier, even your basic Imperial grunt is outnumbering your Spartans 10,000 or more to 1. The Guard alone would be enough, let alone the Space Marines or anyone else. And something I didn't put in the script here, but I'm going to bring up because I'm thinking about it right now, just the Imperial Guard having las guns. Those just recharge by putting the battery next to like a fire or other warm source. So logistically, the Guard are not going to run out of ammunition, whereas UNSC uses projectile weaponry mainly with ammunition needed. So again, just by numbers, logistically, the UNSC is going to eventually fail in not very much time at all, given this sort of disparity. And if you still don't believe me, nothing I can say will convince you, but I hope you were able to learn a bit from this video about at least my perspective on this overall endless debate that seems to crop up again and again. Likely this will still happen, but I had to say something on the topic. Having spent a decent amount of time in Halo, and played a lot of the games over the years, and having spent a long few decades in the 40k universe, there's not a real good comparison to be had with modern existing forces in Halo that truly compete with the forces of the Warhammer 40k universe. If you have liked this content, please leave a like, please subscribe, and check out the other lore videos on this channel about the universe. If you have been here, your ongoing support means the world, and it encourages me to keep this channel going. I'm hoping to get a bit more consistent in this new year, but life is a way of taking over sometimes. That said, I look forward to producing more videos here in the short future about some of the news that has come out about the return of Fulgrim, and speculation on who's returning next for the Primarchs. I hope you have a great start to your new year, and I will see you in that next video. Thanks, and have a great day or night, wherever you are.